Welcome to this overview video for the Conservation by Design Defining Objectives module. I'm Josh Goldstein, and I'm part of the Conservation by Design team, and I'm presenting on behalf of the entire team that developed this module. Conservation by Design is the Nature Conservancy's method for developing impactful and equitable strategies to achieve the 2030 goals. Within Conservation by Design, the purpose of the Defining Objectives module is to help a conservation team identify and align on a set of objectives that describe what the team cares about and aims to achieve for nature and people through its conservation work. Defining objectives underpins effective strategy development by ensuring a team's strategies are aligned with the team's desired outcomes. With a focused set of objectives, a team can develop or improve impactful and equitable strategies to achieve the 2030 goals. Put another way, if a team is not aligned on what it seeks to achieve, then it's really hard to discuss and make decisions about which strategies to pursue, because the team isn't clear on what they want those strategies to achieve. So time spent to identify and align on objectives is time well spent to set the stage for an effective and efficient planning process. That motivation for why a team should undertake this module is well said in this quote from Alison Bowden with TNC's Massachusetts chapter. Quote, "Aligning on our team's objectives proved essential to our ability to make the case for which strategies we ultimately committed to. Spending time up front to define objectives pays off immensely later in the planning process." I've been using the term objectives, so let me now define what we mean by that. The shorthand way to think about objectives is that they describe a strategy's ultimate ends or desired outcomes that a team seeks to achieve. An expanded definition is the desirable outcomes that a team aims to achieve through its strategy, stated as something that the team and interested parties care about and the direction in which they want them to go. What teams most need to identify are what we call fundamental and sub-objectives. By fundamental objectives, we mean the endpoint objectives that describe our core interests for engaging in the planning system. Sometimes fundamental objectives are relatively high level, meaning it's helpful to further define sub-objectives, which add specificity to fundamental objectives. For example, a marine team might set a fundamental objective as improving the health and climate resilience of ocean and coastal ecosystems. They might then define sub-objectives around increasing healthy and functional habitats, rebuilding ocean biodiversity, and improving water quality. This is a partial example, as a team would likely have more than this one fundamental objective, and the team would also want to add further specificity to the sub-objectives, such as being specific about which habitats they are focused on versus not. But hopefully this helps illustrate what we mean by focusing on ultimate ends and the relationship between higher level fundamental objectives and more specific sub-objectives nested within them. Let's now take a look at how the Defining Objectives module fits into a planning process. This figure shows the full set of Conservation by Design modules, including modules that support planning readiness and modules that relate to steps in a planning process, with all of the modules oriented towards helping teams develop and improve strategies to achieve the 2030 goals. The Defining Objectives module is one that typically comes toward the beginning of a planning process, since aligning on objectives is a precursor to selecting strategies and preparing to implement them. A few examples of when teams might find value in using the Defining Objectives module are as follows. The most straightforward use case is when a team is developing a new strategy, and therefore it needs to identify its objectives for the first time. A second example is when a team is looking to refresh an existing strategy, perhaps because of a major political or economic shock to the system it's working in. Final example is if a team will be expanding a strategy to include new partners who will bring in additional interests and insights to ensure that everyone involved can align on what matters and what they aim to collectively achieve. Let's briefly outline what the Defining Objectives module does versus doesn't do. The module primarily focuses on three things. First, to identify and align on the objectives for your strategy. Second, separate means from ends to help you get clear on the ultimate ends you seek to achieve rather than actions you might take, which may or may not lead to your desired ends. And finally, most teams find it helpful to do an initial alignment between their objectives and the 2030 goals. However, this module is not the place to problem solve and talk about potential solutions, meaning strategies or actions that the team could pursue. Rather, that work comes later in the planning process, guided by your objectives. The Defining Objectives module can be used on its own, but it's also designed to connect to modules that are upstream and downstream in the module sequence. Inputs into defining objectives include being aligned on the scope, what's in versus out for the planning process, and also having thought about who to engage and how to support an inclusive, equitable planning process. These components also represent a readiness check to make sure that the planning team is ready to discuss the objectives for its strategy. In turn, having aligned on objectives sets a team up for next steps, which could include conducting a situation analysis to evaluate the pressures affecting the team's objectives, selecting strategies that address the team's objectives, and then developing a theory of change and monitoring, evaluation, and learning plan, again, ensuring that these are responsive to the team's objectives. All of this further highlights the foundational role that objectives play in a planning process. The process of running the module is broken down into 3 main steps. It's pretty time efficient to run this module, with the bulk of the group work happening during a 2-hour work session. And this session can be run virtually using the provided mural board, or you can recreate the workflow on a regular whiteboard if you're meeting in person. So the first step is to identify objectives. This involves a process to crowdsource ideas on possible objectives from the planning team. This brainstorm generates lots of possibilities, and the module facilitator and the team lead work together to review the responses and organize them into a first draft set of objectives. This represents the beginning of step 2, organizing objectives, and this draft set is used as the entry point for discussion and improvement during the 2-hour group work session. The final step, checking objectives, orients around a group activity to do a temperature taking or a quality check to see if the team members feel aligned on the set of objectives. If there remain major issues to address, these get surfaced at this point, and they provide a roadmap for additional steps to complete this work. The tangible outputs of the module are that the team presents its objectives through both a written statement and a diagram. With this aligned set of objectives, the planning team is ready to take next steps in the planning process, knowing that it has a good shared understanding of what it aims to achieve. If you're interested in furthering your learning about this module, please check out the following resources. First, read through the module documents posted on the Conservation by Design website. And if you're looking to get trained to facilitate this module, please enroll in the facilitation course on conservationtraining.org. If you're interested in diving deeper into the concepts and methods underpinning this module, a great resource is a book chapter on establishing objectives by Craig Groves and Eddie Game in their conservation planning book. A link to a PDF of this book chapter is available through the module documents on our website. Thanks for watching, and we hope the Defining Objectives module helps your team align on its objectives, what matters and what you aim to achieve, to help you develop impactful and equitable strategies.